Welcome back. Let's do a quick analysis of The Wind and a Boy. Such a tragic story. As always, first a short summary of the book. The summary does not imply that you do not have to read the story. Just saying. So the story is about Siyosenye. She is a grandmother and she's raising her daughter's son in a rural village. She's raising Friedman, her grandchild, because the mother wanted to continue working and couldn't take the child with her. When the question was asked in September, why is Siyosenye raising a grandson? Some of my learners thought the correct answer was the mother was dead. No. The mother was not dead. The ward in which they live is called Gasefete Molemo, and Siyosenye takes Friedman everywhere with her. There is a very close bond between her and her grandson. He is the apple of her eye and she's very proud of him. The title, as always, significance, relevance, suitability of the title. The title of the story refers to Friedman, the main character. He's a boy who has a magical wind blowing for him. There is something special about him. Not only is he lovable, but he is envied by other parents who see him as a bright little boy who is different from other children. The themes in this short story. The first one is gender roles. There's a clear distinction of gender roles between boys and girls, or males and females in this story. The boys do as they please. No one gives them guidance on how to behave as they grow up. They go wherever they want, leaving home in the morning and only coming back after sunset. In the story, they say the only time when the boys are useful is after a big rain, when they go and gather little animals that appear from beneath the ground, who come out of their burrows. On the other hand, the girls stay at home and they do household duties, which include fetching water. They do not need an education. Siyosenye becomes the envy of other women because she can plow the land, which is a duty that is mainly associated with men. So Siyosenye is somebody who sets her own rules. The second theme, loyalty. Friedman is loyal to his grandmother. He listens to her stories and teachings, and he emulates the heroes from the stories that he has listened to. He goes hunting so that they can have meat. He becomes more loyal to his grandmother as he grows older because he realizes that she needs help and he wants to help her in any way. Siyosenye is then also loyal to Friedman. She is there for him throughout his life. She takes him everywhere she goes and she's very proud of him. Change and modernity, and this makes it so tragic. Towards the end of the story, there is evidence of change and modernity, as is inevitable anywhere in the world. Although the village is still rural and predominantly agrarian, there is an emergence of a new class of people who are modern, buying cars, the first sign of joining Western society. The driver of the truck that killed Friedman did not have a driver's license. He rushed to get a truck so that he could fit into the privileged class. How is the story told? First of all, we always look at setting. Remember, for setting, if they ask in the exams, you have to identify the time and the place. The story takes place in a rural village. The events occur at Gasefete Molemo ward. The time will depend on the extract you get. The structure and plot development, as always, starts with the exposition or the introduction. The narrator introduces the reader to Friedman's phases in life. In the first phase, he comes home from the hospital as a small bundle. His grandmother takes care of him. The next phase is characterized by him toddling silently next to his tall grandmother, being called his grandmother's handbag. And in the third phase, he is a tall, long-legged boy who has become the king of kings of all the boys in his area. The rising action. Whilst listening to his grandmother's stories, Friedman gets hooked on the heroic stories of Robinson Crusoe, the great hunter. Now, the stories his grandmother tells him of Robinson Crusoe are not the real Robinson Crusoe stories, and decides that one day he is going to be just like him. His grandmother is also very clever and wily while she tells the stories. She can only remember part of the story that she learned when she was at school herself. So now she portrays Robinson Crusoe as a hero, as the kind of man that any man should emulate, should use as a role model. So she's also not stupid. Life and its responsibilities start to increase for Friedman as he starts his teenage years. Then he asks for a bicycle so that he can do more for his grandmother. Remember, he's just a child. So yes, he wanted to help his grandmother, but also it implied more freedom for him. There's a wider range that he can explore. His mother then buys the bicycle and Friedman starts running more errands for his grandmother. The climax of the story. Friedman is hit by a truck whilst cycling as he was running errands for his grandmother. So utterly tragic. The description of his death is gruesome, and the author does it so that the reader can realize the implications of irresponsibility. The way that she describes how there is virtually nothing left of his body after being dragged by the truck, it is just horrific. And the resolution, Seosenye is sent to hospital for shock. She dies in hospital and the villagers bury her. There was a question in September asking if the villagers was right in not going to visit her. And as always, I tell my learners, you try to see the yes and the no side of the answer. Yes, they could not deal with seeing her like that. It was too traumatic for them. This independent woman who ploughed her own fields, who was losing her mind in hospital. On the other hand, she was part of the community. Having lost the reason for her life and then not seeing anybody she knew, I think it was a bit cruel as well. Characterization. Friedman, the protagonist, a lovable young boy who is brilliant, talented, and naughty, just like the other boys. Do not put Friedman on a pedestal. He loves to listen to the stories his grandmother tells and gets captivated by Robinson Crusoe's heroic actions. He decides that one day he is going to be like Robinson Crusoe. Very loyal to his grandmother, he wants to help her all the time. Seosenye. She's a loving grandmother who loves her grandchild unconditionally. She doesn't conform to society's expectations. She plows the fields whilst other women sit and wait for their husbands to do it for them. She's a confident woman who holds her head high even when society thinks she has committed scandalous acts. She is physically strong and independent. Then Dr. Friedman. We don't meet him in the story, we just get told about him. He's a friendly foreign doctor who works at the hospital where baby Friedman is born, and then Seosenye decides to name her grandson after him because of the friendly way he treated her when she visited her daughter after Friedman had been born. The narrator's point of view. The story is narrated by a third-person omniscient narrator who has a bird's eye view of all the events that take place in the story. The narrator gives an unbiased turn of events from the beginning of Friedman's life through his growing up stages. Remember, there were 3 stages until his tragic, untimely death. The style. The story is told as a narrative, as a story that is done by a third-person omniscient narrator. The reader easily gets all the details pertaining to what is happening to the characters because the narrator is not part of the story but has a bird's eye view, an objective view of the events as they unfold. Diction and figurative language include similes, as usual, a comparison between 2 things using the words like or as. From side to side like a cobra. Friedman's movements, moving from one side to the other, are compared to the movements of a cobra. Then metaphors, small dark shapes. The narrator compares the village boys to small dark shapes as they sped out of the village to the bush. Only their outlines can be seen. They are not shapes, they are humans, but they look like shapes because you cannot see any details. Extravagant care. The over-generous care with which Seosenye takes care of Friedman is compared to an extravagant gift of love. A small dark shadow. Just like in the first example, young Friedman is compared to a small dark shadow. Details of his body cannot be seen, only a shadow. He isn't a shadow. He just looks like a shadow in this comparison. Friedman is called Seosenye's handbag. It is the way other women referred to Friedman because he was always with his grandmother, just like a woman's handbag is always with her. And then the swollen rivers after the rains. The overflowing river is compared to something that is so full of water that it seems to want to burst its seams. Something that is swollen wants to burst at any minute. Irony. Remember, when you have to explain irony, you have to give both sides. So usually you use the words yet or but. This is what we expect, yet or but. This is what happens in reality. The bicycle was meant to help Friedman and Seosenye, but ironically cuts his life short. The civil servant who comes to the village because of development brings carnage and fear instead of hope and joy. The tone and the mood, remember, you have to determine tone and mood depending on the extract that you are given in your question paper. But in general, for this story, the tone is cheerful and appreciative. Then, after the deaths of Friedman and Seosenye, sympathetic, disappointed, dull, people were in utter shock. The mood then that flows out of the tone in the beginning is happy and optimistic, but at the end, sad, angry, emotional. When you have to identify tone and mood, try to avoid using the words angry and sad. Try to find other words instead of angry and sad. If it is sad, then obviously it is sad. If he is angry, then obviously it is angry. But sometimes you struggle to differentiate between tone and moods, and then you easily just say angry or sad. Try to find other words, unless it's really angry or sad. There you have it. Short and sweet, in a nutshell. See you in the questions video.